Hi, I'm Tina McElroy, Ansa, and I'm happy to welcome you to the first episode of Two Old Chicks Who Know a Lot of Shit. I'm here with my co-host and my friend of more than 50 years, Wanda Lloyd. Say hello, Wanda.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for joining us as we share our stories and our wisdom with you and give you an idea sort of the ideas we and the topics we'll be covering on the show. Uh, what we want to begin with, Wanda, is the deconstruction of our title. We've gotten lots and lots of response about our title, and I'm so glad we did. I knew that we would. I came up with the title as some folks know, but we worked on it. Wanda and I have discovered our superpowers. She goes to the right and I go to the left. And instead of bumping heads, boom, that's our superpower. So we've been opposites ever since we met in Atlanta, Georgia at Spelman College as freshman college roommates. And Wanda's always been to the right and I've been to the left. We've been opposites. So we went to the same pattern that we used in all of our working together in coming up with the title. We worked together on it. Okay, two old chicks. Well, there's two of us, me and Wanda.
That's right. We're old. We admit it.
The old part we worked on because we thought about it, and it led to a lot of deep discussions actually with me and Wanda about the word old and the plague that is covered it in this country. And in other countries there's reverence and know-how in that word, and in this country there's reverence and know-how in that word if we do that. And so without even chatting it up with our friends and our colleagues, Wanda and I decided we were going to claim that word old and work it. I mean, Wanda, old is good, right?
It is. But Tina, I think about my grandmother and when she was old, and I think about what she looked like and how she felt and her health and just the things that she no longer did because she was old. And then I look at us and I go, okay, we're there in terms of age, but we're not there in terms of how our ancestors were because we have such a better quality of life. Well, medical advances and better
education,
better
opportunities. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We eat better. We think about things that we put in our bodies before we exercise more. We didn't just come home and sit down when we turned 70 years old.
Yeah, we came home and did our Pilates. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's our word. We're going to claim it, and we ask you to claim it too. If you're old, say you're old. That's a wonderful thing. It's as I said, there's reverence and know-how in that word. Okay. And chicks. Well, even though we're old, we still want you to know we're a little hip. So we decided chicks. We thought about broads, we thought about women, we thought about ladies, but chicks is what we came up with. Truly having had so many experiences in so many arenas. Wanda and I were a lot of the first two edit a newspaper, the first two be on the copy desk, the first two. So we had a lot of those, but in the midst of that, we learned a lot of things. We do know a lot of shit. We have discovered that.
And wait a minute. It really didn't get real, Tina, until our good friend Sybil Wilkes did this wonderful little promo for us. And she did three, actually, right? She did one that was kind of overall. She did one about you and one about me. And then the one about you, she kept calling you the pouty mouth. Well, that's what really kind of blew this up on social media. And I don't mean blew it up in terms of thousands of followers, but in terms of just the conversation about, oh my gosh, I know who came up with that word, or I know,
I know how Tina talks. Yeah, and then also it's the difference between us. Wanda said, I hardly ever say that word. Mm-hmm. So she so when I came up with the idea, what we said, Wanda, was, what's a good title? And I said, we ought to call it Two Old Chicks Who Know a Lot of Shit. And I just threw that out because I knew Wanda wasn't going to go for that with the shit in it. So I said, oh, well. And then Wanda talked to her.
I called my daughter.
Her supreme mediator, yes.
She laughed out loud. She's 38 years old. She laughed out loud. She said, oh my gosh, that's the best title ever. She said, people my age will tune in when you have that kind of title. But I was still a little uncomfortable with it. So then I started asking a few people, well, is there another word for shit? Because that's just not me. And somebody said ish, and I had to look that up because I didn't know that was a substitute word for the word. But when Sybil did the video and people just said, oh my gosh, I love it. I'll have to tune in. I have to share this information. I went, okay, well, I guess that's what it is. I guess we're going to run with that.
But I have to tell you, when I use it a lot of times in a conversation, I do get a little uncomfortable because I say, "Oh wait, I hope Wanda's not listening. I hope Wanda's not listening to me saying it many times."
Yeah.
So
I won't say I never curse. I just say when I do, I'm not all that comfortable with it.
Well, then, we'll talk about this later, maybe on another show, about how different Wanda and I are and how we're still together and still loving each other and supporting each other after 50 years. But I'm right. I curse like a sailor, and Wanda doesn't want to say shh. So that's another way that we're opposite, but we work with it. It's wonderful. So as you can see, we know we love each other. We like to talk to each other. We have a lot of shit to say. And so that's what we want to bring to you on this show. We also want to, from time to time, bring game changers in different arenas to talk, because we know a lot of brilliant people and we want to share them with you.
Absolutely. So I'm good with it. So why don't we move on? Let's see. We need to tell people.
Well, I really want to hear a little bit more about you. This may be a good idea for us to tell the listeners about our resume, because we really do have a resume. We don't just sit here and talk a lot of shit. Wanda, you want to begin?
Yeah. So we've done a few things in our lives. So I'll go ahead and get started. So I am Wanda Smalls Lloyd, and I'm a retired newspaper editor, a journalism professor, an author, and someone who spent a lot of my professional time as an advocate and trainer for media diversity. And, that's just become so relevant recently, Tina, with all the things that happened last year, and people are sort of having those conversations, which I love that we're having those conversations. So we'll be talking. Yeah. We'll be talking about that too. I started in journalism in high school. I was editor of my high school paper in Savannah, Georgia, and then I became the editor of the paper at Spelman College in Atlanta, where you and I met, Tina.
Yeah.
And I actually went to college knowing that I wanted to become a daily newspaper journalist. I knew from the day I walked in onto that campus. So
excuse me, I have a question. Who goes to college knowing not that they wanted to be in journalism, not knowing that they wanted to work for print media, not knowing that, that they may want to work for a newspaper, but she came knowing she wanted to what, Wanda?
I wanted to be a journalist. Yep. I did. I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to be a reporter, and I never was a full-time reporter. I was always an editor of some kind or another, and I never turned down a good opportunity because of where the job was. So it didn't even bother me, Tina, that when we graduated and we both grew up in Georgia, we went to college in Georgia. It did not bother me that my career took me to Rhode Island, which I pretty much had to look up on a map.
Yeah.
At that time.
I stayed in Atlanta at the AJC. It was the Atlanta Constitution. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you came, but what really struck me, Wanda, is that you came to Spelman 18 years old, and you said one of your goals was to edit a mid-sized newspaper in the South.
Yeah, I got there. So
1967. Who knows that specific stuff? Wanda.
Yeah. So I worked in newsrooms and 7 daily newspapers, including the Washington Post and USA Today. And I retired from my last newsroom as executive editor of the paper in Montgomery, the Montgomery Advertiser in Montgomery, Alabama. So, but there was, a lot more to do than working at newspapers. Along the way, I taught journalism and at several universities, including Vanderbilt in Nashville, where I actually set up a program to teach journalism to non-traditional students who are all people of color. When I retired from my last newsroom in Alabama, I didn't quite know what I was going to do until almost the last day before I left there. I had the opportunity to go back to Savannah as a professor and chair of the department teaching journalism at Savannah State University. So coming home after all those years, 40 some years away. And then last year I had 2 books published. My memoir, Coming Full Circle from Jim Crow to Journalism, came out in February 2020, just a few weeks before the pandemic shut down the planned national book tour, which Tina and I were going to do some things together.
We were going to go to Atlanta Experiment. That was going to be our first one. Then we were going to jump in the car and go down to Florida, where Wanda's daughter is, for another event at the museum. Wanda had a really wonderful we had, between her publisher, me, and herself, had a really nice book tour planned. But the COVID happened, and Wanda, as you will discover on these podcasts, is your can-do kind of girl. She quickly pivoted to digital, and we learned a lot of things. We
did. I actually got to do about 6 weeks on the road before we shut things down. So I had a little bit of that in-person experience, which I absolutely loved. But you know what, Tina? My body was tired after 6 weeks. And so as bad as COVID was, as sad as we are that we lost hundreds of thousands of lives and we were locked up in our homes for over a year, I'm kind of okay with this digital book tour. I'm actually enjoying doing everything.
I think of all the people that we can reach who we couldn't have
Exactly. I could do something in New York City in the morning and California in the evening. It actually made it a little easier.
But like all people during the pandemic, I miss hugs. I miss looking down that line and seeing people waiting, exciting, holding a little book in their hand, waiting to talk to you, and the interaction that you have. But we're going to find a way to do that. I mean, I think that it's a matter of us just learning how to do it.
Yeah. And then I co-edited a book with Tina, which was published after the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. So we'll be talking about that. Many of you probably already heard some of the events that we've had online about that, digitally book tour events about that.
Can I just jump in one time, Wanda, to say about your book? When Wanda retired from newspapers after a long career, how many years in newspapers?
42, I think, either 42 or 43.
Almost 50 years in newspapers.
Yeah.
Of course, she went on to go on to another arena of scholarship on at the Savannah University campus. But in between that time, Wanda and I had talked, and she had this conversation over and over at any pause in her life about writing her memoir. And Wanda would say the same thing. Why would I write a memoir?
Nobody cared about my story. That's what I told you.
Now, she always said that, but by the time that she retired from her next iteration as a college professor, you really had given it some thought and started thinking that there was a lot of value in your story.
Yeah, and the students helped me with that because they would often ask me. They knew I hadn't been in the academy forever, that I had done something else in my life before coming to the university. And they would ask me, well, how did you get from point A to point B, and where did you come from, and stuff like that. And in telling stories about my career, it just automatically came up that I grew up in Savannah in the era of Jim Crow. And so a lot of the things that they asked me about was, well, what kind of restaurants did you go to? Well, we didn't go to restaurants because we couldn't go to restaurants. Well, where were the movie theaters? All the things that they take for granted now, of course, and rightly so. They were shocked that I had come from an era where we had so many restrictions on our lives, going to segregated schools and libraries and not being able to go so many places, and then ascended to the top levels, some of the top levels in journalism. And so it was me telling those stories that inspired me that I need to start writing them and, putting them on paper so that I could share them with everybody who might care about that.
Yeah. We have the same idea for this podcast that you and I had lived, and really lived and worked and ascended and, had the downfalls and all of this for a good 50 years, each of us, and that we had things to share. And, I think that's another thing that we always talk about. We're going to talk about a bit more on the episodes, and that is agency, remembering what you can do, what power you have. And you and I discovered that over and over. I think in the last 5 or 6 years, the power that we have to do what
Right.
we want to do, even though there are
So,
obstacles.
so speaking of power, Tina, let's talk a little bit about your career. And
Okay.
let's get into your bio. Tell us about that.
Okay, all righty. I'm Tina McElroy. Ansa. I'm an author. I've published, I'm a novelist. I've published 5 novels: Bigger the Family, Ugly Ways, The Hand I Fan With, You Know Better, and Taken After My Dear. And I've also been, as Wanda said, the co-editor of Meeting at the Table, African American Women Write on Race, Culture, and Community, which Wanda and I published in 2020, the end of 2020. She published her memoir at the beginning of 2020. And we published Meeting at the Table in November of 2020. I always say that I'm one of those little schoolgirls who always knew I wanted to tell stories, and that is the truth. I wanted to tell. That's how I got into journalism. Wanda forced me into joining the school newspaper, and I discovered, oh wow, I love this. You mean you can make a career out of this? So she really set me on my career as a journalist. I'm also a publisher, which is one of the reasons we were able to publish this book so quickly. I founded Down South Press, which is a small independent publisher, in 2007. And I published, as a matter of fact, my last 2 books. It's also the publisher of Taking After My Dear, my latest novel.
Tina, when we started talking about Meeting at the Table, one of the things that was really important to me was that we get that book out in 2020. Oh, because so much was going on in 2020, and I felt like we had to do it. And I knew from the experience of my book that it takes a lot longer than less than a year to get a book out into people's hands. And so as we were thinking about, well, how do we do this? How do we get it done so quickly? And and all of a sudden Tina went, boom, I've got a publishing company. We can do this. Which she founded in 2007. And guess where it was? It was in Montgomery. Remember, you came to me, called me, said I want to have a press conference. I want to launch this new company of mine. And I want to do it somewhere other than St. Simon's Island, where you lived then and live now. And I said, well, come to Montgomery. We'll figure this out. So I called the director of the Rosa Parks Museum, and we did it right there in the lobby of the Rosa Parks Museum, which I thought was so fitting that we were in a place where an African-American woman was honored because of her bravery and courage. And here you were starting a new business as an African-American woman, doing something that not at that time, not a lot of us were doing.
No, not that many. I tell young authors now, when they say they've self-published a book and I say, well, you may as well found a publishing company. You've done all the work. You got the ISBN number. You have to do the publicity. You had to get it printed. I think that the small publishing companies really are going to sort of save us going forward, because the big publishing companies cannot do it all, and they don't all do it in the same way. But at any rate, so I founded the publishing company, Down South Press, and in 2004, I also had founded the Sea Island Writers Retreats. Because when I founded the retreats in 2004, the only other retreats were held by Marita Golden's organization, the Hurston Wright Organization. And I think there was one in upstate New York, but there were no writers retreats for African-American people to come and really just sit in the work, the way you and I did, Wanda, on the phone and talk about it and take time to. The other thing about Wanda being the person who found the perfect place for us to launch the publishing company. I have a picture of you and me in the lobby next to Rosa Parks, next to Rosa Parks statue.
I have that.
But that really highlights what Wanda has always been to me. She's always been a friend. She's always been there. I mean, we decided after freshman year we couldn't live together. We would have killed each other. She wanted the window open. I wanted the windows down. She was singing all the time. She was in a glee club, and I was tone deaf. So everything was different. But we found that in doing that, we remained friends and good partners, really good partners. And we didn't even know we were being partners until we started actually working together on books. And that was just in the last year, huh?
It was in the last year, but the friendship endured. And one of the blessings about the friendship is that our husbands became friends also.
Yeah.
And so when we would get together, it was the 4 of us who were just in sync, about where to go, what to do, how to get things done, because they were mostly together on your book tour. Because you came to the city where I lived. Every time you had a new book, you would come and I would have a party. But you were also there to do a book festival or some other speaking engagement.
Oh, we would look for any opportunity to get together in whatever city Wanda was. But that's another way that she supported me. I have pictures of every single book party for every single book that I have published. And we didn't have a party for meeting at the table,
right.
And I promise you, we have plans. We have plans to get together with Wanda and myself, with the wonderful contributors that we have. We have 15 contributors. So that's what I am. I'm a publisher. I'm a writer. I'm a teacher. The writers' retreats, I think, were wonderful. There are a lot more of them now. They're a lot more inclusive now. But there is something about getting together in the Sea Islands off the coast of Georgia with African American writers. There's something in the air. There's something there. So we've had them around the country, but the ones that we really like are the ones we have in the Sea Islands. So that's
when you talk about the fact that there were only a couple of writers' retreats sort of targeted or run by African American women, you have this little wonder that there's so few of us who are telling our stories, because we didn't have those opportunities, in mass to go and figure out how to do that, and I got it done because you were there to help me and say, well, wait a minute, this is an important story, on a story that I thought, well, who cares about that? Whether it's the whole book or just one little story in there. I had a couple of other friends.
Or just Jim Crow.
Yeah, just the word Jim Crow. My goodness, how many times have we heard about Jim Crow since my book came out?
Since 2020, since the beginning of 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just about the writing, but it's about the thinking, because you were always telling me, thinking time is writing time. And so just thinking about how to write a book and having somebody to sort of bounce that off. So one of the reasons we decided to do this show is because as Tina says, we've been working together a long time. From my memoir, Tina wrote the foreword, which she claimed she started writing as soon as I started writing the book.
As soon as Wanda told me, let me tell you what kind of woman Wanda is. As soon as she told me, she said, I'm serious. I'm really going to write this memoir. I think I'm going to do it. And I went to my computer and I wrote a file that said Wanda's intro. I called it Wanda's intro at first, and then I changed this to Wanda's foreword. I knew that I wanted to write the foreword to the book. And I knew that Wanda was going to finish. And if I didn't start, she would finish the book before I finished the foreword. So, which you did, don't say anything, which actually you did.
Well, I did. I came to you and I said, would you write the foreword? And I didn't know that you had already started working on it, but I was a little timid at first about asking you, because I know that writing is something you do so well. I thought, she's not going to want to put her good words in my book. My goodness, how is a beautiful one. So we'll be talking about books later. This isn't really the podcast about the books, but since Tina put meeting at the table up, I'll just put that up there. There we go. Say that's the cover. And I think,
hey, don't be quick about it. This is our episode. You can put it up there the whole time if you want to.
Okay. It's actually it's over my shoulder as well, because I'm in my Zoom room. And then, of course, because we did the double book tour, Tina's been on tour virtually with me coming full circle. She's done a lot of the appearances with me. We've been in conversation as a format with some of them, and then of course meeting at the table. So while we were working on meeting at the table, and we would have conversations sometimes at night. We were editing on Zoom, on Google Drive, and sometimes we would talk for 4 and 5 hours. Maybe half of that was editing, and maybe the other half was just talking about life, about wisdom, about young people, about how much you know,
about marriage, about men, about face cream.
That was one of the
we are all into the facial. We are all.
Yeah, remember the night we ran to the bathroom? You were at your house and I was at my house, and we came back with all the creams that were on
and
us.
I lotion to say I use this. It was wonderful. It was a whole new, it was a world that just opened up for us and we didn't really know. It's a difference in Zooming than in talking on the phone, we discovered. Being able to see each other's faces and expressions, seeing each other's face creams, but seeing each other's faces and expressions. And we looked up and so much time had passed. We just really didn't realize how natural that was for us just to talk about things and to share ideas. And so Wanda and I said, between the two of us, we were both copy editors, where you have to know lots of information at newspapers. And I said, between the two of us, we know just about everything. And so we started talking about just sharing that, talking about sharing.
Absolutely.
That
We started talking about how to do a podcast because we didn't know a thing about how to start a podcast. I happen to be a fan of podcasts. I have a dog. I walk my dog twice a day. I listen to podcasts on my walks when I'm not listening to books.
I'm new to podcast.
Yeah, but I didn't know how to do it. And so, we did so many appearances, but we've been talking about this for a long time. So,
our producer, Karen Walker, thank you so much. We always tell young people that there's good ideas sort of like float right above us, and I see it like in a cloud, and good ideas are just all up there. That's just the universe up there. That's, all the rich stuff. And, at some moment, about 10 people will reach up and pull down a good idea, and out of those 10, maybe 2 people will actually, do something about it. But when we knew that a podcast was a good idea, we just needed the
technical expertise.
Thank you very much. To do it. But we tell young people, you just keep doing what you do and the universe will give you somebody. And I was talking to our wonderful producer, who is one of my little schoolgirls. Wanda has mentees and I have little schoolgirls that we take care of and who share their lives with us, and we share our lives with them and try to, help them along. And I was just talking to her. We have a meeting every month. And so I was talking, and we were just saying, she is, by the way, she is the founder and the producer of the Morehouse College Human Rights Film Festival. Kara is. And we were just talking, and she says, I was looking for my partner, and I was looking for, a show to produce. And I'm like, what? Wait, we're looking for producers. It was kind of like when we did the book, Wanda,
Right.
Hey, I got a publishing company.
Yeah, right. Light bulb went off. Absolutely.
And one of the things that we talk about is our relationship has always been organic. We didn't even know it was organic when it was organic. It just grew from we just decided as 19-year-olds that, we couldn't live together, and as roommates, but that we wanted to remain friends, which is sort of a sophisticated thing to do. And, we just sort of did things organically. With the book, Meeting at the Table, occurred organically because we were just talking about, what can we do in this time of a pandemic and this time of social justice, reckoning. And so it happened organically. And the same thing happened with this podcast. It just happened organically. We had these conversations on Zoom. We're big into sharing. We believe that the babies ain't got to learn the hard way. Mm-hmm. That, we can teach the babies a little something along the way. And that's what happened that's how we came up with the podcast, huh?
So Tina, we named it Two Old Chicks Who Know a Lot of So I think now is the time that we ought to say what we say we're going to do. We have a segment that we want to do every episode called Dropping Some Wisdom, because we do have a lot of wisdom, and we promise people we have a lot of wisdom. So I'm going to get started with dropping some wisdom. You got it. You said it. You got it. So dropping some wisdom. My first wisdom that I'm going to drop is it's never too late. Here we are, 70 some years old. We're doing things that most people really don't think about starting at 70 years old, whether people are changing careers instead of continuing careers. For me, it was writing my memoir. I started writing it well after I was 65. It was published after I was 70. And so, it's never too late. meeting at the table. You know, we were in our 70s when we started it, and when we ended it, it's never too late. So I really want young people to
not only we were in our 70s, you were retired twice.
Yeah, my family tells me that I failed retirement 101 twice and maybe 3 times. Who knows? Who knows what's ahead? But I just want younger people to know it's never too late. I was listening to you know what Clubhouse is? The audio thing that seems to be the latest app these days. And I was listening to one of those Clubhouse discussions that was led by someone that I know, and she invited me to come in. And they were talking to women, older women, who were talking about how they disrupt their aging process. And one of them said, I lift weights, I'm a bodybuilder. You know, and one of them talked about her new career. Some of them talked about travel. You know, what is it that, what do you call it? Hacking aging? You know, it's never too late to start these things. Yeah, because we in a general sense are not just the ones, although I'm sure people who have grandchildren love their grandchildren. We're not the nanas exclusively. We're not going to just sit down and take care of, you know, our grandchildren and go nowhere and do
all day long.
Exactly. So that's my wisdom. It's never too late. I want people to think about that. Every time somebody gives you an opportunity, it's never too late. I have some friends who say, oh my gosh, I could never start exercising now. I could never walk, you know, 2 miles a day now. I could never start a new career now. Not even a new hobby. I think you should think about it when you're of a certain age or even before, because it really is it's never too late to start a business if that's really what you want to do. And you have the resources, financial, emotional, health, all the resources that it takes. It's just never too late. So that's the wisdom I'm dropping today. What's your wisdom?
That's great wisdom, Wanda. And you know what I was just thinking? It's not just for older people, it's for younger people. I talk to so many young folks who say, oh, well, I'm 20, 29 now. I guess it's too late for me to do so. What are you talking about? You know, this is experimental time. So that's a good pearl of wisdom to drop. My wisdom is, and this is probably for the younger people, is it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. It's a simple adage, and nearly everybody has heard it spoken to them. And mostly, you know, at some time of heartbreak or tragedy or death or, you know, some tipping point in your life, it's questionable whether things are ever going to be all right again. I want you to remember that phrase. It's going to be all right. My sister had an older friend in New Orleans who was a soul of calm wisdom. And my sister had told me that Miss Ticola could say those words that could, you know, in a tone that made you just know it was going to be all right. Not long after that, I, of course, had a opportunity to reach out to Miss Ticola in one of my stormy times. And before I could tell her the whole drama, she said it. It's going to be all right. God, it went all through me, Wanda. You know how you hear something that just goes all through you, went all through me with its gentleness and its certainty and its wisdom, because it's true. We will get through this some way. Life will go on, sometimes in a different direction, but it will be all right. Just the way
you and I have had to tell each other that from time to time, because my sweet little baby Bella, my dog, was missing one night. We got out on the street. We were going up and down the street with flashlights. We were calling her name. We couldn't figure out how she might have gotten out of the house. She was gone overnight. You know, we cried. We called out to her, and I called Tina and I said, Bella's gone. She's missing. We don't know where she is. We don't know what to do. And Tina said, you know what? She'll come home. She knows where home is. Woke up the next morning. I was standing in the laundry room, just kind of looking down at her little empty plate, trying to figure out what I was going to do with this cute little plate. And Bella comes out from somewhere in the house. She was under something all night long. She had some little dust or some dirt on her or something from somewhere. I don't know where she was. Behind a piece of furniture, wherever she was. And so fast forward to 2 weeks ago, Tina's cat got out. One of her 2 cats got out. She loves May, and May Jean was gone. And Tina called me, and she was just, oh my goodness, it brought back so many emotions. And I said, Tina, remember what you told me? It's going to be all right. Maygene knows where home is. And what, about 3 or 4 days later?
5 days later.
5 days later, she's
she
just
was gone.
sitting up there on the porch, waiting for somebody to open the door and let her in.
Give her something to eat.
I know that's a simplification that our animals are dear to us, but you're right. It is going to be all right.
It's going to be all right. You know what? I can't reproduce Miss Ticola's voice because it was just honey. You know, it was so peaceful and calm. But what I want all of you to do is just to put that sentence in your head. It's going to be all right. Hear it in whatever voice you hear it in. It's going to be all right. You know, put it in your mind. Encourage other people. Tell that to other people. You know, as soon as you learn something, you got to teach it. As soon as you teach it, you got to learn it all over again. But put it in your mind and encourage people. Recall it often. So when that next thing happens, and it's going to happen, you can remember Miss Ticola's voice and remember her time-honored wisdom and let it soothe and center you until the world is back in whatever alignment it's going to be back in. But I promise you, it's going to be all right.
Great wisdom, great wisdom.
This has been so much fun. Oh my goodness. We're gonna have to do this again. Y'all have to come back again.
That's right. That's it for the first episode of Two Old Chicks. We want to thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the information. Thank you for everything. We hope you'll tell others about our podcast and join us next time. And we're going to talk about the power of mentoring. You know, Tina talked about her little schoolgirls and my mentees, and we really want to share some wisdom about the power of mentoring. We have mentored countless writers and journalists, so we're going to talk about how important that is in our lives as well as in their lives.
We may even have a guest, Wanda.
Absolutely.
We may even have a guest. Well, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify so you never miss an episode. And plus, I lost my earring. Plus, follow us on Instagram at Two Old Chicks Podcast. We'll see you soon. We want you to take care of each other, and take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Good night, goodbye, and be well. We love you.
Oh, yeah.